Any relationship involving two imperfect people is going to result in fights.
And we're going to talk about some ways that you can fight and actually help your marriage instead of hurting it. Welcome to Beard and Basil. I'm Jason.
And I'm Kara.
And we're talking about a topic that's...
I really need to remember.
We all need to remember. It can be an uncomfortable topic, fighting.
Yeah.
It's something that everybody deals with. If you're in any kind of relationship, chances are you've had a disagreement or a fight. Yeah.
And this is something that I really struggle with, especially in our marriage, because I am a stuffer. And then...
stuffer.
A walker awayer.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, thanks. And then an exploder. And like those three things combined, like when I stuff, like it just all comes out. And I either end up walking away or exploding and saying things I regret. And so I really struggle with conflict. Like it makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah, and one thing we kind of figured out early in our marriage, and you've probably figured out too if you're married or in a relationship or whatever, is that you tend to emulate whatever you saw growing up. Mm-hmm. So the way that your parents dealt with conflict is probably the way that you're going to initially deal with conflict once you get married.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. You've watched them fight for 18 or 20 years, unless they just never fought in front of you, which might make things worse for you.
You might have different problems.
But you watch that for so long, you can't help but emulate that. It's just how it is. It's programmed into you. So coming into marriage, you kind of have to reprogram yourself to learn how to fight correctly.
Mm-hmm. When we come from very different backgrounds as far as healthy conflict.
Right.
And so...
Yeah, for me growing up, it was a lot different because I would see my parents have disagreements, and I always knew that after a matter of time, they were going to fix it. Like, there was going to be an end to that fight, and they would hug, and everything would be okay. Mm-hmm. I would have arguments with my mom where we would just argue for hours on end, and with the goal of eventually this is going to end, and we're going to be okay.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so everyone comes from different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things is just to, right out of the gate, say that fighting is okay. It's okay to have disagreements.
It's not, you shouldn't view it as negative, even though like some of the behaviors can be negative. Mm-hmm. Fighting is actually can be very healthy and make your marriage stronger if you do it in a healthy way.
Exactly. And I think one of my favorite verses is Ephesians 4:26. Mm-hmm. And the first part of that verse, he says, "Be angry, but do not sin." And
which is impossible for me.
Which is really
not impossible. I'm
difficult. Yeah. Which is difficult, but it tells you that it's possible to be upset without sinning, and that it's okay to be upset, and it's okay to be angry and have disagreements and work through issues. But there's some things that you should avoid, and there's some things that you should do, and that's what we want to talk about, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got 5 things that you can do to hopefully avoid making things worse or damaging your marriage or causing more problems.
Yeah.
So let's go into it.
Okay. So... I'm going to get as much out of this as hopefully some of you are.
Me too. We all will. We're learning this as we do it, for sure.
Okay. So the first one is don't put off a conversation worth having.
So a lot of times, the things that start fights are a lot of times very small, right?
Yeah, like just a ton of little small things.
Yeah, a sock on the ground. A little comment here or there.
All over the floor.
Okay. We're not going into... It usually starts as something very small, and a lot of times it can be a whole bunch of small things that build up because they were never addressed.
Right.
And so whenever something small happens, you kind of have to look at it and go, is this something worth having a conversation about? Yeah. Is this something that's really bothering me? Is this something worth talking about, for the better of our marriage? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, and this is where I really struggle because it's all these little things that I stuff inside, then I start to treat him differently without even realize that I'm treating him differently because I'm annoyed. And then in my head, I'm thinking, I just need to give him grace, but I'm super annoyed. And it comes out affecting the way I treat him.
Right. Yeah. So the key with this one is, first of all, decide if it's a conversation worth having.
Yeah.
And pray about it. Talk to friends. Do whatever you have to do. But decide whether or not you want to talk about it. And then if you decide not to, then drop it.
Yeah.
And move on. And this doesn't mean that every little thing that pops up you should have a conversation about. In fact, as a general rule, you should probably be saying 2 encouraging things for every 1 issue that you bring up to your spouse.
Or try to put yourself in their shoes and give them grace. Like, for instance, if you make lunch and then you forget to put all the stuff away, like that really annoys me too. That's never happened. But I also know that there are days when you're in a rush, and so I'm just constantly in my head like struggling, like, okay, give him grace. Right. No, I should actually talk about this, and then I don't, and then it just ends up bad.
Yeah, so definitely try to figure out if it's a conversation worth having or not. And also a great way to have these conversations is over date night. This is something that we've talked about and that we do is every time you have a date night, just ask your spouse, hey, how am I doing? Are there things I can work on? And that's a great opportunity to say, like, actually this thing has kind of been bothering me, but you're not upset. It's a neutral ground, and you can bring it up without causing a fight, hopefully, and nip it in the bud before it becomes a fight. Right? Mm-hmm. So there you go. All right, so number 2 is watch your words.
So usually you can tell what your goal is during a fight with the words you use. So if your words are loving and respectful and kind, then your goal is usually reconciliation, to get back on the same page with the person and to move forward with your relationship. If your words are attacking or blaming or shaming or hurtful, most likely your goal is to either be right or hurt the other person because you feel hurt.
Yeah, exactly. And this is something that I personally struggle with quite a bit is making things a lot bigger than they are, and making it about more than just this specific fight or instance that we're sorting through. So what I try to do is stay away from you statements, and then it comes across attacking. Yeah, it comes across attacking. You statements or generalizations. So a generalization would be like, you always do this. Yeah. Or like, why are you so this? Or like making it about more.
Or I don't feel loved.
Yeah, or I don't feel loved by you. When I really should be focusing on the specific thing that happened or that you did that made me not feel loved. So a better way to do that is to say, I don't feel loved when you do this, or when you did this, even more specific. Talk about the instance. Don't make it about their character or about, the past or something more general. Like
we just talked about this like 3 nights ago.
Yeah. When we were trying to plan this episode, actually.
We got in a fight.
That's how it
goes. Okay. So number 3 is, if you need a break, set a time limit.
The second part of that verse that I mentioned earlier in Ephesians 4:26, he says, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And this is something that my mom taught me really early on and just really instilled an importance for this idea of not letting time go by without fixing the issue that you had. So it's essentially, it's not okay to have a fight, to blow up, part ways, and then just not fix it. Because that happens a lot. Yeah,
and honestly, this has been the biggest problem with me in our marriage, is bringing that mindset that it's okay to walk away and then just talk about it the next day. Because sometimes it just takes me longer to process things, and he's instant. Like, he can think about it and like want to fix it like right away, and I'm not like that. Like, I take a long time to think about how I feel, and then to even verbalize how I feel is a whole different story. And so sometimes like I just feel so like I need a break, and it's if I just walk away, and I don't give a time limit because I'm just mad and I want to be myself. So he, like, when we first got married, that was one thing that we said, if you're going to walk away, like, you have to give me a time limit on how long you're going to be, you need time to think or whatever. So it was like an hour or 2 hours or whatever it was. Like, it can't be left open.
Right. It can't be just left.
Because then I'm using it as I'm going to hurt you because you hurt me. Yeah, or have control over the situation. Like, I'm going to drag this out as long as I can because
she knows that it bothers me.
It does. It really hurts him.
I just want to fix it and be done with it. So it bothers me to not have that. So it's even tough for me to say, let's talk about this again in an hour, because I just want to get it over with. Like, I want to be done with it and move on. Yeah. But it's so important to set a time limit. And this is something that if you agree early on, stick to it. Yeah. And really stick to it and say, we can talk again, but let's give it an hour. Let's think about it. If you need to go talk to another friend or something, do it, but make sure that you come back and talk about it again.
And I'm getting better.
You're getting better, much better. So it's a process.
God
for
is
both
good.
of us. Yeah,
He can change people.
Yeah, both of us. All right, so number 4 is get the log out of your own eye. So in Matthew, it's 7:5. Jesus is talking and he says, "Why do you see the speck that's in your brother's eye, but you don't see the log that is in your own eye?" And it's kind of a funny way of saying it, but it's very true. It's so easy for us to point out the littlest thing that anyone else is doing, especially our spouse. Right. I do this all the time. I notice.
Yeah, I know.
Why are you doing? Okay. Why are you doing that when I have a whole laundry list of things that
Well, it's always easier to point out other people's faults than to stop and think like, oh, I do that too.
I have tons of faults.
Exactly.
Yeah, and St. Augustine says that pride is the mother of all sins. So that's really what it is. It's a pride issue.
Yeah.
You can trace literally every fight that you've had in some way back to pride.
Yeah.
Thinking that, why is this happening to me? Why is she doing this? She doesn't love me, or they don't love me because, I think I'm better than I am. And I think that I deserve some,
Yeah, we don't deserve anything.
Some standard from your spouse. So I think it's good to maybe just do a pride check. If you take a break from a fight for an hour or whatever, like we talked about, maybe just sit back and do a pride check and realize the grace that you've been extended, and hopefully that'll put things in perspective and you can have a little bit more grace for your spouse. I think one great question to ask is, what if Christ held me to the standard that I'm trying to hold my spouse to?
There's no way. Yeah, seriously.
Right?
Kill me.
Yeah, it just feels like a kick in the guts.
Yeah,
so put that up somewhere, because it's true. And when you think about that, like, why am I harping about this little thing when I have done these horrible things to God's standard, and He still loves me?
And He continues to love.
And He still gives me grace.
Yeah.
And I really think that's going to help you put things in perspective and maybe show
if
some
you
grace.
Stop to think about it.
Yeah, but you have to.
Because usually we
try
don't
and stop. So that's what I'm saying. Put it on a wall. Tattoo it on your arm or on
your face,
your forehead, your spouse's face.
Give grace.
Yeah, because that way, when I'm talking to you, I would see it. Maybe I'll do that.
No, you won't do that.
Anyways.
Okay, moving on. Number 5 is get help. I really suggest that if you have somebody in your life, or together as a couple, if you have another couple that you really respect and they share the same beliefs as you, that you go to them when you're fighting, or when you and your spouse can't get on the same page.
Right.
Because there are going to be times where you guys just go round and round. Like, we've experienced that, and we both have people in our lives where that happens. Like, I go to my friend, he goes to his friend, we talk about it, we come back, and then it's just so much it's just so much easier seeking wisdom from people that we love and respect.
Yeah, but you have to decide that person
before you fight.
Yeah, and that's the key is know who that person is, and then move on. Write it down. Put it on a wall. I mean, that's the thing with any of these things, is that you have to decide this stuff beforehand.
Yeah.
And I mean, write it down. We have this from our premarital counseling. These are all our
rules,
our different rules, and we both signed at the bottom and said we're going to try to do these things when we fight, and put it up in your bathroom.
Yeah, we keep it in the bathroom, behind the bathroom door. So
if you're in there ticked off,
Jason usually goes in there when he's really mad.
No, I don't.
For hours. No, he doesn't.
No, but put it up somewhere where you can see it. And
it's just a reminder of, like, these are the rules we've laid in our marriage, and this is what we expect when we're fighting. Yeah. And so, I mean, it doesn't happen all the time.
No, you're definitely...
It's the standard.
Yeah, you're definitely going to mess up. But if you don't write it down, and if you don't put it somewhere, you don't stand a chance.
Right.
Ultimately, these things are important. Your marriage is really important. And learning how to fight is such an important part of your marriage. Because if you're fighting in a volatile way and in a really bad way, it will ruin your marriage.
Oh, yeah.
And
definitely.
Like, God says a lot of stuff about marriage, and He says a lot of stuff about relationships. And, the greatest commandment is to love God and to love other people. Yeah. And your marriage is the best way in your life to live out that commandment. Loving God through your marriage, and then loving your wife. It's your most important relationship on earth.
Or husband.
Yeah,
and also I feel like when you're married, for me, I realize the depth of my selfishness. And so that's one area that God has really been working on me with, but I feel like that's with everybody is you don't realize how selfish you are until you have to live with somebody all the time.
Yeah. And God has a lot to teach you through marriage. So try to check your pride. Try to be humble and give grace, and you're gonna learn a lot through your spouse, and you're gonna grow closer together and love each other more as the years go by instead of resenting each other. So there you go. Thank you so much for watching.
Thanks for watching.
Reach out if you have any questions at all.
We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. So have a good day.
Thanks.
Or night, or whenever you're watching this.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.